The LinkStation N2 could be the perfect server for home use, as it is perfectly suited as a NAS and can also serve as a super easy smart home solution. What this device can do, what features it offers, and much more. I will show you after the intro, as always. Enjoy! I would say, first of all, let's just take a look at the device from the outside. The device reminds me a little bit of a game console, but it's something completely different. Still, I think it could theoretically be presented very well, as it has a metal panel at the bottom with a nice LED strip that can also be configured via the software. This strip can be folded forward, revealing two rather hotspot style SSD slots where you can screw in 2.5-inch hard drives. Additionally, in the middle, there's a USB-C port that can be used for USB sticks, connecting a mouse, keyboard, and so on. However, the whole thing can be easily hidden with this panel here. Otherwise, we have two more flaps on the underside. When you open them, you have two M.2 slots where you can connect an additional 4 M.2 SSDs. On the back, we have a 3.5mm jack, an HDMI port, a reset button, two USB 2.0 ports, a USB 3.0 port, a 10 gigabit network port, and of course, a standard power connection. Inside the device, the typical N100 is at work, which you have already seen on this channel, with, for example, this mini PC. Additionally, there is 32 GB of integrated eMMC storage, but we will discuss that further when we get to the software side. Because unlike many other devices, you can buy, whether it's an NVIDIA Jetson, a used thin client, or even this Intel N100, which I have already introduced in another video. With this unit, you have the advantage of receiving a pre-installed operating system. And yes, of course, you get that directly with a Synology or another NAS as well. However, we have the unique feature here that it's not an operating system from the company LinkPlus itself, but rather you get a very, very widely used operating system pre-installed, namely Unraid. I personally really like this because in the past I have often introduced NASE systems, including those with Intel N100. However, you always had to disassemble the unit, remove the pre-installed software, and install the new software yourself. Here, you have the advantage that as soon as you receive the unit, you just need to plug in the power cord, connect it to the network, start it up, and then when you go to the device's IP address, the Unraid interface is displayed directly. In addition, you also receive an Unraid license with the device. So, Unraid now costs money annually, I believe. This license is included directly, so you don't need to get an extra license and don't have to worry about reflashing this device. I don't think we've covered Unraid very intensively on this channel so far. In principle, it is also a virtualization system like Proxmox, but with, I would say, a small NAS functionality, and Docker support included. So you would have the option to pack several M.2 SSDs in here, securing them simultaneously with a RAID-like format so that one hard drive serves as redundancy in the system and all other drives can contain fixed data. If you would like a more in-depth video about Unraid, feel free to write it in the comments. However, what is probably most interesting for us on this channel is that there is a relatively large developer in the Unraid community named Space Invader. And he has provided a package that allows you to get Home Assistant OS up and running with just one click. This means you have, on one hand, a NAS through the Unraid system itself, and on the other hand, a virtual machine on it with which you get the complete Home Assistant OS and thus can get Home Assistant running directly on it. Of course, there is also an app store where you can install a lot of additional apps, and theoretically, you can run anything on this device via Docker. First, here are the basic specs of this device. In addition to the LinkStation N2, like the one I have here, there is also another one that is more designed for HDDs. Personally, I am a big fan of setting up a NAS that runs exclusively on SSDs, especially since SSD prices have dropped so drastically in recent years. This way, you not only gain an incredible speed advantage, allowing you to fully utilize the 10 gigabit port, but you also benefit from significant energy savings. SSDs logically require significantly less power because they have no mechanical components, allowing you to fully equip this unit with confidence and achieve a very, very low power consumption. Here is a display of the power consumption of this device after I simply connected it to a power meter socket. If we calculate this with an average electricity price, we arrive at this amount here, which you would have to pay annually. I find that completely acceptable. And thus, this device is not only great for beginners, as you get a pre-installed operating system and don't have to configure much, but it can also be used by hobbyists and even professionals, because Unraid is extremely expandable. As mentioned, Home Assistant can be configured very easily here. You start the device, and go to the web interface, set a new admin password, and then register your license that you received. Next, you need to create your SSD pool. To do this, you simply select the SSDs you have in the system, and then either add a spare drive if you want data security, or leave it out if, like in my case, you only have one SSD in here. After that, you can start up the so-called array, meaning you start your data pool, format the hard drive, activate Docker and the community store in the settings once more, and then we can look for the Home Assistant package from Space Invader. Start it up. And now a container is started that is responsible for ensuring that the VM, which is started in the background, remains continuously online. If it crashes or something happens to it, the Docker container ensures that it is automatically restarted or booted up again. This way, you have ensured that your Home Assistant system always runs perfectly. Now we could, of course, move on to the data storage part. First, define a folder that we will later share, allowing us to access it directly via Windows, macOS, or Linux. You can then either make it completely available to everyone on the network or protect it with a username and password. And that's how easily we have Home Assistant running on Android, or rather on this device. Of course, we could also install any other operating system on it. So if you prefer to use Proxmox, you can also install it here and use the integrated eMMC storage for it. However, I find it very, very attractive with Android and would simply leave it at that. Price-wise, the whole thing is also super attractive. The only downside I must say at this point is that the whole thing is currently still a Kickstarter campaign. I will of course link it for you in the video description below in case you want to take a look at it. I am also firmly convinced that it will eventually become a finished product and will appear on the market as such. They probably made it a Kickstarter campaign more for marketing purposes. However, Kickstarter still has the reputation that it takes a bit longer until you have it at home. Regarding the financing of the whole thing, I can say that I'm a bit late with this video, but as a result, I already know that the project is essentially fully funded. So they have received their money, you can see it displayed here, and accordingly, it is very likely that this will become a finished product. However, those who want to be absolutely sure should either wait until this Kickstarter campaign is over, or alternatively, if you don't need such a nice case and installed operating system, but want to get started right away, you can of course opt for a ready-made device. I will definitely link an alternative for you in the video description. Lastly, if you are one of the first to watch this video, I will display an Amazon voucher here for you. If you are the first, feel free to redeem it. If you are not, then please help me improve this statistic a bit by clicking on subscribe. I would definitely be very happy about that, and it would help me reach even more people with the next videos. Thank you very much for your support, and now back to the video. The conclusion, I definitely find the device really cool. I like this Xbox-like design. To me, it almost seems less like a device you should put in a rack and more like one you could already have in your living room. I'm especially excited about the 10 gigabit port and the ability to connect a lot of hard drives here. With 4 M2 and 2 regular SATA SSDs, this is really quite extraordinary here. The Internet 100, a quad-core, is definitely sufficient in terms of performance for most applications. And anyone looking for an energy-efficient, affordable NAS is definitely in good hands here. The downside is, of course, the Kickstarter campaign, as on one hand, the delivery times are longer. And on the other hand, the whole thing always has a somewhat shady vibe. If you still want to go for it, you can certainly check out the video description. Otherwise, just wait until the Kickstarter campaign is over. I assume that you will simply receive the device afterwards. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe even found it helpful. I would, of course, really appreciate a rating, and then I would say, see you in the next video. Take care. Until then, take it easy and goodbye.